All right. Good morning, guys, or good afternoon to those that we will be watching later. Wow, I got tongue tied right off the bat. We are joined today for, I believe, part two. It's been since the early days that we've had Dr. Thompson on with us, Dr. Dick Thompson, codename Dynamite. Speaking of that, we've got his book here today, and as a matter of fact, both of his books are in the show notes down below. The Stress Effect and his book one of his series of his tours with SOG. Can't wait for part two to come out, which we were speaking a little bit offline, which is going to be absolutely fantastic. And we're just happy to have you back with us today, Dr. Thompson. And I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to you and let you get it started for the day.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to come back and talk with you and your audience again. So very excited to do this. And I'm just going to tag on to something that you said about the book. The SOG Codename Dynamite book is out. I'm a little biased. I think it's pretty good. And if you get this book and start to read it, one of the things that you'll notice that's, I think, unique about this book is I tried to write it to let you see what it's like to become a 1-0 and lead teams on these missions, and not just talk to you about the mission, but what I've tried to do is say, this was my first mission, and this is what happened. And if you haven't seen the book, I tell you now, it was a disaster. We were ambushed on the LZ, and I learned a lot about fear, about stress, about what happens when your fear level goes way up and you lose your fine motor coordination, and it's hard to even get a magazine in your weapon, especially if you're covered with blood because the person next to you has been shot up. And I try to, in the book, put in, this is what I experienced, this is what I felt. And then as the book goes along, you'll see we did an after action review every time we went on a mission. So you'll see how we talked about what went well, what didn't go so well. You'll see based on how we performed. I took the team through post-mission training after each mission so we could work on the immediate action drills or whatever that we didn't do so well on, so that we didn't make those mistakes or have those problems again. And then you'll see the pre-mission training that we went on prior to the next mission to get ready for it. And then also, across time, as I learned more and more about the NVA and how they reacted, I changed some of our tactics, how we reacted to the enemy, and started teaching, the team members, this is what the NVA are doing, because it's human. They don't want to die. And there are certain reflexes that people engage in. And I've been watching them. I know what they're going to do. So let's counter that. And let's make sure that we don't do those same responses to combat that they're doing. So that'll make us better and more powerful against them. I changed our loadouts across time. So we started carrying a lot more in terms of fragmentation grenades and claymores. We standardized where everything was carried, how we carried it. So you'll see those kinds of things in the book. And I think you'll find that that's different. And book one gets a little intense as you go along. And then book two raises the intensity level significantly. So I think you'll like both of them. But any questions that you want to ask this afternoon, go for it. So I'm going to turn it back over to Bud and let him kind of lead us along here.
Yep. Let me see if well, we've got one that I actually asked just a moment ago. James is awful curious. When is book 2 coming out?
It's going to be shortly after the first of the year. The book is written, but it just needs to have the final edit done to it, and then be submitted and loaded up. So sometime shortly after the first of the year, it should be available on Amazon, and I'll get the word out to Bud and other places to let you know that it's out there, so you can go get it.
Absolutely, and we will absolutely get the word out. And whenever you get it out, you are absolutely more than welcome to join us again to talk about it and promote it a bit. We've actually got another book related question. Will there be a third in the series?
I don't know. I'm still looking at that. It, if so, it'll probably be more of like a technique book, and all of the SOG techniques and things that we did, back in the 60s, they laid the foundation for what special ops guys are doing today. And I spend time with the different special ops units from time to time, talking to the operators about how to do different things, how we did things, how we were able to do what we did without night vision goggles, without thermal imaging, without having everybody having comms and being connected. And I mean, we didn't have all the technology. You had to do it the old-fashioned way, which with EMP could set everybody back to the old way instantly. So it'll knock out all the technology. So I know a lot of the units now are starting to say, how do we navigate without GPS? How do we move at night without night vision goggles and things like that? And you'll see a lot of the techniques laid out, particularly in book 2, but even in 1, invisibility, becoming invisible to the enemy, and what that means and how you do it. You'll see how we started doing that in book 1, and then take it to a much higher level in book 2.
Like I said offline, that was one of my favorite parts. It's it's kind of a new style on the SOG books. We're still getting all the action, but you're really breaking down not only your team. We're getting great historical value, and you listing the names of all of the teams, and the great job of you remembering such details of the number of mission, the target, visual reconnaissance flights, which is one thing we'll be getting into today that I've been very interested, especially rereading the book and remembering some of the more hairy incidents y'all had, especially Mr. Eldon one time. But we've got I think you know what I'm talking about. Miss Mary Jo has a great question right off the bat. That is dealing with y'all's rations, and in particular something you what you felt like. Miss Mary Jo was wondering, in the book you compare U.S. rations with Project Indig rations, which seemed healthier and include a vitamin supplement. Did you notice personally feeling different or better when eating the Indig rations versus the U.S.?
Yeah, I started eating the Indig rations fairly soon after I started going out on missions. On missions, part of remaining invisible is you have to be quiet. You can't let them hear you. It made more noise to open the U.S. rations, just the paper and tearing and doing different things that you had to do. it was just noisier. And so I switched over to the indige rations, and I'd have a big rice ball each day with mutton or fish heads or whatever mixed into it. I could keep that in my pocket, and it would be ready to eat whenever I was ready. It's very quiet to eat. You don't make any noise. So I was doing things like that, and I normally only ate one ration a day. I found if I was only going to be out there 3 to 5 days, then one ration a day was fine, and that way you don't have a lot of trash, you don't make noise. So, and I like the indige rations.
Mentioned also helps with you smelling similar to the indigenous, because I remember you may have mentioned the last time eating American food, and it, you still smell like American out there in the bush.
Yeah, again, part of being invisible is not sending out a smell that they could detect. I mean, I had a very sensitive nose, and I could smell them from a pretty good distance. That helped prevent walking into some ambushes a few times. I knew when they were coming. I could smell where they were at night. Their spices and rations were a little different than even the indige rations. Excuse me. And I wanted, eventually, you'll see in the book, we switched over to no spices 3 days before the mission. We switched over to no soap 3 days before the mission, no shaving, no anything that would leave a smell on you or your clothes. You didn't wash your clothes. They had to be washed 3 days prior to us going out without soap. If we smelled like anything, we wanted it to be like North Vietnamese, not Americans, not indige. So we went to some extremes to camouflage our smell, and it made it easier for us to smell them.
This one comes up a lot because, in all this action and all the books, it's always, well, not always. There are some that mention it, and some of the Ranger books. I'm reading one right now. They mention it. And Sean has a good question. He's always wondered as well. How did the Recon team hide their waste when they had to use it on missions?
What I would like to say is that I told them, if you poop, scoop it out, put it in your pocket, and take it with you. But I didn't go quite that far. But you did take your knife out, and you made a little hole that you could push it down into, and pack it back down. But like I was saying a minute ago, my plan was to have our poop smell like NVA poop. So even if you found it, you smelled it, it smelled like them, not us. And it's not uncommon to be asked, well, what if you had to pee? How do you pee when you're out there? You can't just stand up and pee. It makes too much noise. There are some times when, particularly if it's raining, you might be able to get up against a tree and pee on the tree and let it run down. If the jungle was quiet and it wasn't raining, then you lay down on your side. But try to be angled so that there's a little slope going away from you, and so you don't get wet in the process. But yeah, I mean, it's an issue. Now, we also, at least with my team, and let me say this too. I'm telling you what I did with my teams. Every team, 1-0 was a little different. The teams were a little different. These are the things that I did. So my team took a drug called Lamodal, and it was an anti-diarrhea type drug. And what it did was it stopped you up. So you didn't have to poop very often while you were out there. The problem was being able to poop when you got back. But I guess the new version of Lamodal now is called Imodium. You can still buy that. But we took that anti-diarrhea just so that we didn't have to go very often, because you didn't want to get caught with your pants down. And there's one example in the book where they almost caught me with my pants down. I mean, within a couple of minutes, if they'd have been just a hair earlier, it would have been embarrassing. So.
And one thing I also wondered on, I hate to stick on the bathroom issue here, but what did each team member, or did the whole team carry as a unit any toiletries, if you will, a roll of toilet paper, or what was that situation if, God forbid, y'all end up having to go?
Yeah, so the rations, had a little bit in there that was kind of folded up and wrapped, so you had a little bit that you could take with you. And some people would use a stick or a leaf, some wide leaves or something. You just had to know what the plant was.
Absolutely. God forbid you get something brashy.
But it had to be buried. You couldn't leave paper laying out any place.
Man, oh man, that's I would do what you did. I would do it, anything possible. Take Imodium, and I'd worry about having to go when I got back. I could figure out a way to go when I got back. I would not want to be using the restroom out there. We've got a few more questions before we start getting into some other stuff. These are some of the next ones are dealing with tactics, but did your SOG RT team Recon team ever use the fishhook ambush maneuver?
Yeah, we used the fishhook maneuver every time we stopped for the night to set up our RON. We would always hook back around and go down some, so that if they were tracking us, we would hear them come by us up on the ridge. We would know that they were coming. And then on some occasions, we would put toe poppers up there just before we hooked around, so that they would hit the toe poppers. You'd take out whoever their lead person was. And typically, when they hit a toe popper, they just assumed that we were out in front in the direction they were going, and they would open fire and start spraying the jungle and woods, but we would be kind of off down the side of the ridge and behind them. So that gave us a good warning and an opportunity to start slipping away, or at least be ready to set off the claymores when they came down. And if we wanted to, falling back up on the question, if we wanted to ambush them, and we knew they were following us, we could use the fishhook to do that with.
That I can't imagine that. That's always been, especially reading about a very detailed like yours, about y'all getting ready to RON for the night, because some people, and I've read the some of the Force Recon teams and some of the SOG teams just being led by an inexperienced leader, and they think they did well enough and going right to their first place to bed for the night and not moving again, and it, of course, turning out horribly. So that's always been a interesting, making sure y'all fake the first and get to a better, to where you can make sure they're coming in on you.
Well, one of the things that I started doing after a while was, when I started with Um, you know, RT Alabama, yeah, I was the 1-1. So I was watching how the team leader and the team were doing their RONs. And so I started experimenting some. The team leader let me do that. Let's not just put a claymore or maybe two claymores kind of facing the most likely avenue of approach. What I wanted to do was daisy chain claymores together so I could set off 3 or 4 claymores simultaneously, and that would get their attention. And then when I got to Michigan, then I was the 1-0, so I changed the RON. I would daisy chain 7 claymores together on the most likely avenue of approach. So then with 7 claymores, that's 7 or 10.5 pounds of C4, tremendous blast, 4,900 steel balls traveling at 4,000 feet a second going out at you. That really got their attention. I mean, it'll just cut a swath right through you. The people who are close to it, well, some of them will turn into pink mist, and the others are just Swiss cheese. And it really stunned them to get hit with something like that. And then if they continued on, if they regrouped the survivors and continued after us, I would have another 3 to 5 claymores daisy chained waiting on them a little further down the ridge. And that would go off. And by then they're saying, this guy's crazy. And where did he get all these claymores? And he's crazy. And it would really slow him down. But one of the things I changed was I wanted every team member to carry 3 claymores. So if you had a 7-man team, you had 21 claymores. And I also changed so most teams carried 5 fragmentation grenades. On my teams, we carried 10. So 7-man team, you had 70 frag grenades. So in the dark, we could really mess with you because you couldn't see where they were coming from. There's just explosions going off all over the place. The claymores we put some of those behind us on time fuse, and they would just go off randomly, and they didn't know where we were. They didn't know what was coming next. And until you pull the trigger on the Car 15, they don't know exactly where you are. And you can, chunk the hand grenades out there and really mess with their minds psychologically, as well as taking a lot of them out.
I mean, I was just reading about a team having a Ranger team having a few claymores, and they were talking about how lethal they are, and mind you guys, some places they could clear a LZ, not completely, but they could clear an LZ with a claymore. I mean, it's an instant bush hog. So imagine Mr. Dick and his team daisy chaining 10 or so claymores together, and the amount of the backblast alone on that, will it not? It could very likely kill you if you're definitely right on top of it.
Yeah, you have to get away from it. Most people, most people would try to put as many of them as they could in front of a tree. So there was a tree right behind the claymore, and then you were, you had 100-foot wire on it, so you could get away from it, and that would take out some of the blast that was coming back toward you, but the rest of it was going out toward the bad guys. And just a concussion from the claymore would knock you out.
That's what one of the gentlemen was saying, that they had some newbies, and they could not. That was their first time in action, if you will, seeing the effects of a claymore, and they could not believe it. And he went to say, make sure you're away from that backblast you just saw. But that before I get to some of these other great questions, guys, I'm sorry. that was leading me to another back to a question about RONing for the night. Did SOG teams use claymores to would y'all put claymores out at night to RON, or would y'all bury deep and hide for the night, or did y'all put out?
Well, we would hide, but we would put the claymores out. You know, with my teams, anytime we were going to be stopped and not moving for 15 or 20 minutes or more, we put out some claymores just to help us in case they walked up on us while we were there. But in the RON, we always put them out. And if we had to leave the RON because we were being attacked or about to be attacked, we would detonate them. And we didn't always. The NBA assumed that when this claymore blast comes at them, you're behind it. So sometimes we would turn them, you know, so the blast was coming from a little different direction, and they think we're over here rather than where we really are. So you had that, and particularly at night. At night, the last thing we wanted to do was fire a weapon. So that's where, you know, having a rucksack full of fragmentation grenades came in handy, because you could start, if they came on through, you could start throwing frag grenades out there, and they don't know where they come from. And, you know, so as long as you can stay hidden, you're better off. Eventually, if there's enough of them coming, eventually you'll have to start shooting back. But when you do, it's going to light you up like a neon sign every time you shoot.
Now, when you'd when y'all would put the claymores out for the RON at night, I've heard from or read in some of these other books, this was a Ranger team, but I think I've heard about SOG teams having issues with the NBA getting up close to maybe try and turn the claymores around, and because they'd see where they'd try and follow the wire and would turn it that direction. Did y'all do the try and switch up and curve the wire, or do stuff
lead
like
the wire away from, don't bring it straight back to the team, go off to the side. So that gives you a little more time to hear them moving, and be able to set them off. So even if they're not in front of it, when it goes off, the blast is going to hit them.
I still, every time I hear, read, or see mention the daisy chain and those things, I just cannot imagine the blast wave off of that. Kyle, since we're talking about some wild stuff, did you ever try to implement any tactics or techniques that turned out a little too risky or crazy to try and pull off in the field?
There's an example where the launch site did something that was crazy, trying to resupply us. When I told them I don't want a resupply. They're too close to us. They're all around us, and you're going to give us away. They came out and dropped it anyway, even though I wouldn't tell them where we were. They dropped it, you know, where they thought we were the last time they'd heard from us, and it did compromise us, and ended up with a big firefight. We had to come out with a prairie fire emergency. I heard about people not putting claymores out. I heard about people letting everyone go to sleep at night in the RON. So there are things like that you would hear other teams had done, but most of the time you'd also hear why they'll never do it again. You know, if the team didn't get wiped out. So I tried to be selective in the things that we did. I tried to watch the NBA. What did they do when we make contact? I mean, it's not just, well, we're going to shoot back at them, and you do that. But my approach was, what are they doing when we shoot at them? How are they shooting at us? How do they move? And I started telling my team, right away, if we're not moving, we're dying. Because once we stop moving, they're coming around us. They'll circle us, and we can't get away. Um, so keep moving, and then try to make our movements control them, because we know they're trying to get around us. We know what the terrain looks like because we've studied the maps and memorized it. So try to move your team so it causes them to get in bad positions or not be able to move as fast to get around you. So you think sometimes because they're chasing you that you can't control what they do, but you can. A lot of times you can cause them to go, where you want them to, and they end up in a bad tactical position, particularly when the air support gets there. So,
yeah, and y'all were lethal with that air power, especially in the book, guys. Again, if y'all have not gotten Dr. Thompson's book, he's actually has 2 books out. Both are linked in the show notes, but there's some great parts in here of him utilizing both fixed wing and some of the snakes, the cobras, just outstanding stuff. There are actually a few more good questions here. Wow. This is interesting. I'd like to know this too. If you could take any modern fighting rifle in place of your CAR-15 of the day, Tom, we're in an alternate universe here. What would it be?
Right. I mean, if it was today, I'd probably take an M4, which is very similar to CAR-15, but it's got the front post on it. And I would take today's ammunition, which is very different than the ammunition we had. SOG teams had CAR-15s. It means you got a shorter barrel, but the ammunition was made for an M16 with the longer barrel, so the powder didn't burn as fast. I mean, powder was still trying to burn as the projectile was leaving the muzzle, so it wasn't traveling as fast. It wasn't hitting as hard. The M855 ammo that they have now, made for it, that Special Ops is using, it burns faster, so it's traveling really fast when it comes out. The ammunition you can get today, you can get it with a steel core inside the projectile. It'll go right through, AK-47 steel magazine without any problem. It'll go through a vest that they have on without any problem. So if you still want a short weapon, if I'm in the jungle, because you're not shooting far anyway, but you want to hit hard. And I carried a lot of ammunition. I know the military is looking at changing to, I think it's a 6.8 millimeter, which is going to have a lot more knockdown power, but it's heavier. And how much weight can you carry? Like on SOG missions, and I was unusual, I carried 50 magazines. And most people carried 30, 35. But I also shot a lot. When people started shooting back at me, it kind of irritated me, So plus that gave me usually some extra magazines I could redistribute among the team members. But it's heavy.
It's always interesting. I can't imagine what it would be like with y'all today, having drones over you, ISR at all times, having inter squad communications, even the ammo, like you said, that the guys today have. I mean, good Lord. I mean, watch out, world. SOG's here.
Yeah. If I had the opportunity to maybe get a second piece of technology from today, it would be the comms. I mean, it's unreal the difference that makes. One of the problems that we had was trying to communicate. I'm talking to Covey, I'm talking to gunships, I'm yelling at my people where to go. I'm trying to, do all this stuff. Car 15 is very loud. So it was making a lot of noise, and with all of us shooting and, 30, 40, 50, NVA shooting their AK-47s at us, the battlefield was extremely noisy. And as soon as someone went down to the ground, which is where they had to go if they didn't want to die, you couldn't see them. And now you can't hear them because the noise from the guns are so loud. But with what, the modern day special ops guys have, they have ear protection, so they're not losing their hearing. It even amplifies the sounds when there's nobody around. And everybody can talk to everybody. So when you go down and I can't see you in the vegetation, I would be able to talk to you if I'd have had that. So that makes a big difference, being able to communicate.
There's a few that came up on top of you talking about what you would like on your rifle wise. Folks were wondering about, let me see here. Two things I know. One, we see a lot of the guys in SOG, I think even in 69, maybe definitely in the 70s and later, with a foregrip from the M16. Did you have a foregrip, and would you have used a foregrip?
Yes. If I had been smart enough to think of that, or to have seen, I think CCC was the first group of SOG guys to start doing that. I think they modified some down there. But yeah, if I had seen that, I'd have been sawing a handle off and putting it on trying to hold that thing down. It just stabilizes it more. We had a sling that went down, and where it was affixed to the weapon, you could push down on it, and that helps you be able to stabilize it. But the other problem we ran into, after about 10 magazines, the handguard on that Car 15 was so hot you couldn't hold it. Even if you had on gloves, it just got too hot really quick. And particularly later in 69, when we finally started getting the 30-round magazines, you could put out an extra 10 rounds through there very quickly, and it would just heat that thing up. So you were shooting with one hand, basically.
We've spoke with it may have been Mr. Ralph Morgan from CCN, and he was talking about with his having his Car 15 and finally deciding to put the foregrip on it, because he too did not use the foregrip at the very beginning, and because he would use y'all's leather gloves, I believe, that y'all got for rappelling. And he said after a very long and intense and scary firefight, it got so hot that it was literally scalding his fingers to the touch.
Oh, yeah.
So he immediately put a foregrip, guys, as you can see right there. There's one of the foregrips that we're speaking about at the moment, and I believe that's.
I wish I had thought of that.
Yeah, that's y'all's ingenuity for stuff back then, and seeing the modern guys all with broomsticks or foregrips, whatever you'd like to call them, is pretty amazing. That's just so neat. Also, would you have cared to have, if you could, a suppressor on your weapon back then?
Not a silencer, but a suppressor. The Car 15 has a little flash suppressor, and it does suppress the sound, because occasionally, that thing's just screwed on to the end of the barrel, and occasionally in a firefight, it would come off. And when that thing would come off, you'd have a ball of flame that big around coming out the barrel every time, and the sound would just double. It was unreal how loud it was when that thing came off. But if you look at what the special ops guys carry today, for the most part, they have a suppressor that significantly reduces the sound, and that helps them be able to communicate more because it keeps the noise level down a lot.
Like you said, I can't imagine back in the day, what, trying to communicate when y'all are, oops, someone had had a moderator on the car 15XM177. What it would be like trying to communicate while y'all are in an ambush or on the run. I mean, and God forbid somebody gets lost. How great that could have been to have inter squad communications. I mean,
yeah. And when they would go down, just knowing why they went down. When my guys, it was SOP. If you get hit, they would start yelling, hit, 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 as they went down. So I would know they were hit, they were still alive, and the vicinity of where they were, so we could try to move forward and get them. And they knew if they went down, we were coming, and we were going to find your little buns, and we're going to drag you out of there. And they would yell, Chung-Ree, hit, 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 and we'd go after them. So you got to take care of them. That made them more confident because they knew I wasn't going to leave them out there if there was any way at all that we could get them. But I need to know they're hurt. If they're dead, I can't do much for you. But if you're still alive, I'm not going to leave you out there with them, or it wasn't my plan. I know we never had to leave anybody, but I know some of the teams did, and they didn't have any choice.
That is so, those are always just so sad to hear about. And like you said, knowing that they've got faith in the Americans, I can only imagine how hard that makes them fight, knowing that you're there for them and there for you in the same manner. It's absolutely amazing. And the last part for the weapon question, would you like a sight, a red dot, anything that they've got today, would you have used back in the jungle?
I probably would not have in the jungle. I use the quick kill method, and it's a point shoot, and it's much faster to acquire a target if the weapon is down here and you're pointing and shooting. If you've got it up here, one of the first things it does is it blocks out so much of your view of the battle space and what's going on. It's more difficult to change targets from up here. But if you've got it down low and you're shooting from here, you can engage targets very fast. And we practice. All my guys practice on the range in between every mission. We're out on the range, and we were practicing hitting the silhouettes, standing up, kneeling, going to the prawn, changing and shooting. We did all of that stuff over and over again, and they could hit you. Whatever they were looking at, the bullets were gonna hit, and it's just much faster. And I've demonstrated that on the range for the people who want to come up. Now, if you're shooting out beyond 50 yards, the accuracy is not nearly as good as coming up here. But there are a lot of things that teams do today that's too slow, it's too awkward, it conceals too much of the battle space. You need to learn to do it the other way. And one of the things I started doing with my teams was on the range, we would dedicate a percentage of the range time to shooting left-handed.
Wow.
Because you never know when you're going to get hit in the right hand, arm, shoulder, and you have to change. And with a CAR 15 or M16, they're set up for right-handed or left-handed. So if you have a right-handed gun, with your index finger, you can release the magazine falls out, the other hand puts it in, bump it and shoot. But if you put it in your left hand, now your thumb can't reach the magazine release without changing it around. Everything is in the wrong place when you go left-handed. And when you're in a hot firefight, that's not the time to try to learn how to do it left-handed. You need to already have experience with it and know what to do left-handed. Even when you go to put the magazine in, I mean, everything is just different when you move it to the left side. So we would make them practice shooting. Special ops teams today do that all the time. They go to the range and they practice shooting right-handed, left-handed, with pistols, rifles, whatever, because they know you may have to do that. And there's sometimes just to get around the edge of a building or something, you need to shoot left-handed to get around there.
And especially for you guys, like you said, and guys, I'm going to try and find, there's a great video of, he was in SOG very early on, and I'm I can't remember his name, John, gosh, I'll remember it at some point in time. I'll look it up while we're speaking. But with the quick kill, and you have to remember that most of y'all's encounters are, within meters of each other. It's not like you're, hitting,
they're right here.
hitting 100-yard shots. And like you said, it's going to take time for you. If you're one of those people that want to look through your red dot, you need to be able to spray. And I can only imagine how, there again, distance coming in when you're practicing with your non-dominant. If you get pretty good, I mean, at that distance, you can get pretty good with your non-dominant. So yeah. You were way ahead of your time yet again.
It takes practice. The other thing that most people don't realize, even people who've been in combat, is when your stress level goes up, because people are shooting at you and it's coming really close and you're about to die, you can't get your nice, clear sight picture, sight align. You can't see your sights up close because your vision changes. And all of a sudden you practice so many times on the range getting that good sight picture, and now you can't see the sights, so you can't get it. So, but if you learn to shoot from down here, so you're looking at the target and the gun knows where to shoot, you don't have to worry about that.
Man, I mean, that's one thing I'm glad yet again how you styled your book, that it was that pre-mission training, pre-familiarity with new weapons, gear, whatever is coming up that y'all not ready for, which will be coming into just a second for a question I'll be asking, but also which we can talk about after this question is. Very interested about how you handle post-mission training. But this question that Mr. David was wondering about, because I thought I remember you having a beacon at some point in time. I could be misremembering, but did your SOG team ever use close air support with spooky fire support while you were at CCN?
Yes. Eventually, I don't know, maybe the last half of 69, somewhere in there, it was just a little transponder. I mean, this is not one. This is a strobe light, but it was about this size. And, it had a little switch on it. And when you turned it on, it was transmitting a signal that Spooky or Spectre could lock in on, and then once they had your position, they could engage anywhere around you. They could fly in a little tight circle, big circle, wherever you wanted it. They could do it, and you didn't have to give away your position, in the dark by firing a flare or something like that. You just flip it on, let them lock in on it, and then they could do a tremendous amount of damage. One of the missions with Michigan that I was on, we used that when we were about to be overrun. at night, and we were able to get a Spectre gunship out there.
And I gotta imagine that that's psychologically got to be one heck of a feeling for you guys, knowing that that piece of equipment that you had could safely wreak havoc on the battlefield, and then on the other side of the battlefield, I cannot imagine what it's like them thinking they're about to overrun a group of SOG men, and all of a sudden bullets out of the sky come out of nowhere, and you never knew what hit you.
Yeah, I mean, it cut down trees, cut down whatever. I mean, because they are high explosive rounds that are coming in, they're exploding when they hit the ground. And then, you know, you got a 105 howitzer setting up there too, that they can fire down at wherever they want to put it. I mean, it was just an unbelievable tool.
I always enjoy hearing about y'all getting to call some of those in. There are some great stories. Questions are slowing down. There's one more good one right here, and then I think we can talk about some of the more interesting parts of getting a mission and handling that, and what goes on after as well. But Mr. Frank was curious. When would you insert on average, and why? Time of day, morning, night, what, midday?
Some of it depended on, you know, what the mission was, and also what was going on at the launch site. So there are some days when, you know, there were several teams or hatchet forces scheduled for that day. And, you know, so they would fit you in depending on, you know, a lot of times what the mission was. Sometimes it was good to go in late afternoon, late evening, so that you could get on the ground, you could move, get away from the LZ, and get to an RON, making it more difficult for them to track you and find you, because you could hear them stumbling around out in the woods, the jungle, as they were trying to find you. Sometimes you wanted to go in right after first light, get in, move quickly, go find the target, hit it, and be ready to come back out. So that varied some, but to some degree, it was also driven by, you know, the schedule. One of the missions we went on, we were going to be supporting a hatchet force. So we had to wait for them to insert the hatchet force before we could go in. And the hatchet force takes a lot of aircraft, and it takes a lot of time to insert them. You know, so we had to wait. It was probably afternoon before we got in, because we had to wait on the other activities that were going on.
That is just I've always reading about the guys that, unless for a particular reason, the guys doing last light inserts, that's got to be pretty scary. Going right off the ship, and you're going straight to bedding down, and with the way things were going with leaks, or y'all suppose and ended up being true with leaks, that'd be pretty worrisome, getting right off the aircraft and having to go bed down for the evening.
Yeah, the first mission I went on, that was with Alabama. Ours, they were actually testing. They were running a little test. We're going to put some teams in right at first light. We're going to put some teams in at last light, and we're going to see which seems to work the best. And my team was selected for a last light. And, you know, one of the things, an advantage of that was, since we were engaged right off the bat, you can really see the tracers good at night. They really light the place up. So we got to see a lot of green tracers coming. But yeah, it didn't go well for us that time. But
We've actually had two quick questions pop in real quick. Daniel was curious, have you noticed that you have a Oh, I've noticed you have a Vietnam tomahawk back on your wall. It has become an iconic symbol of unconventional warfare during Vietnam. Um, is that what that is? You've got a tomahawk back there from, is that for a ranger school or?
Um, I'm gonna hold off on that one.
Okay. Okay.
Um,
That's perfectly fine. That's perfectly
yeah,
fine.
that's you'll read about that in book 2.
Okay. Excellent.
And
All
then
right.
it'll have a lot more meaning if I don't say anything else about it when you read
That
about it.
that just hooked all of us like a big mouth bass. We are all now sitting on pins and needles to get to that. Daniel had another question though, or this time a question. That statement was another one. Did you ever come in contact with it during your time over there? And if so, when and how? Oh, yep, he was talking about that. So we'll find out about that in book 2, Daniel. Jason, hang on one second. We'll get to that because I actually have a question about this as well that Galil is asking about. What piece of enemy intelligence, treasure, gear was your team most proud of that it collected while on a mission?
For us, it was the documents that we would take off of the enemy soldiers, particularly the higher ranking ones. That I couldn't read it, but when it was turned into our intel guys, it had a lot of information on it, and I think one of the biggest hauls of enemy intel, like documents and stuff, maps, a whole 9 yards, was by RT Michigan with Eldon Bargewell as after I had turned the team over to him. One of the missions later, he just captured a cave full of information.
Wow. And that's actually why I went right to that one, because I've got a question. This might actually be the mission you're speaking about, because this is RT Michigan photo from Mr. Eldon. And I'm wondering if he got this. This is a Vietnamese field telephone. And I'm wondering if he may have scooped this bad boy up during his document grab.
I'm not. He might have. I didn't see everything that he got. Because
Did
it
you
was
guys
turned in as soon as he got back.
did you guys come across field phones often when y'all get to any certain size base, or was it kind of rare to get on one?
It was kind of rare. Not that they were not there, but to be able to get that close to where they had them. But yeah, for us, while I was there, it seemed to be relatively rare. But for Bargewell, nothing was rare. He could, if it was there, he could find it.
Jason, about to hit yours. Zero Mike Foxtrot is wondering, are your books on Audible or in audio format?
Book 1 is in the process of being converted.
Excellent. Excellent. I know a lot of people are big audiobook listeners and have been curious about that. Jason, he'd like to know if you wouldn't mind speaking a little bit about the Black Dynamite hunting excursions. He didn't get to catch all of the last one. He remembers you speaking about it.
In the last part of '69 at CCN, Lynn Black and I, our schedule was kind of changed a little bit, and we were back in the compound at CCN at the same time more often, and had an opportunity to spend time together. And one evening, as we were consuming some philosophical nectar and talking about missions, talking about recovery from a mission, and then getting ready to go on another one. Both of us preferred to have short turnarounds on missions. Didn't want to spend a lot of time in between missions, thinking about, well, man, that was close. They almost got us this time, or whatever. We didn't want those things to interfere with us. So I suggested to Lynn that maybe you take a few of your indige, I take a few of mine, and let's put them together, and let's run some local missions outside the compound wire over around the base of Marble Mountain. Let's just go out there and let's work on some techniques. Let's set up some small ambushes. Let's do some sniping, and we can experiment. There's some small groups of people moving around out there at night. Let's go ambush some. And what if we use all silent weapons? What would that be like, to do an ambush with silent weapons? And we did that, and then we said, well, what if we use the 22 pistols with the integrated silencer? We dropped down to a 22 bullet. If we armed everybody with one of those, could we conduct a good ambush and nobody's going to hear us? And that worked. And then we started thinking, what if this was like a company? So we created what we call the Black Dynamite Hunting Club, and let's invite some of the rear echelon guys who never get to go outside the wire and do anything. Let's invite a couple of them to go with us if they want to. They get to go out on an ambush and shoot at somebody, and they might not want to do it but once, but they get to do it while they're here, and then they can go back and tell war stories about it and all of that. So that was our hunting expeditions, is we'd invite some people who wanted to go with us, take them out, let them shoot some people, and it was pretty cool. And what that did was it kept Lynn and I experimenting, seeing what would work, how to make it work better. It had us working with live fire shoot back targets. So we were running little missions, and that kept us busy in between the SOG missions. So it was pretty cool.
That's
Lynn's a great guy. I mean, he was a great guy, very creative, very innovative. He was a fun guy to work with.
Yeah, I've had the pleasure to finally get to speak to him this year, and I'm trying. He thinks he might be open in December. I'm going to try and see if he'll come spend the afternoon talking to us for a little while. So I know he's got quite a few stories to share. And guys, I just shared. I don't know if I showed it, but I think Mr. Dick and let's see if Mr. Dick has seen this. Jason Collins, who does Pucker Factor, wrote a little
Lynn
piece.
Lynn Black and I put an article in there about the Black Dynamite hunting expedition.
That is, when I got that, I was I think he sent me 2 digital copies when I first got them, and as soon as I got to that, I was like, oh, good Lord, I've never heard or read or seen anything about this, and instantly started reading. Guys, this is actually available through Jason or probably on Amazon, but it's a great, goes into great detail on that. It's quite the story of their little hunting expedition.
Sorry,
I think he's got.
I needed to go somewhere.
Oh wow! Oh man, that is wonderful.
Jason had these T-shirts made and sent one to Lynn and one to me. So it was
that is great. I'm so glad he made those for y'all and sent those to you.
So we posted a picture of the two of us. We had to cut them out and put them together because we weren't in the same location, but both of us with the shirts on, and
Good.
that was pretty cool.
Good for Jason. If he watches this, Jason, thank you for doing that for the guys. That's great. I love that. We've hit a little bit of break on some questions. Did you have anything particular that you would like to share with us about maybe either we've got several things. I mean, either starting or running a team, getting a mission, visual reconnaissance. Would you like to speak anything about some of that running the team?
Sure. You would get missions most of the time a week or so out. So you had a little preparation time to get ready for it. And what I would do was start pre-mission training for the team based on whatever the mission was going to be on that occasion. I would try to schedule a visual reconnaissance if we had time and it was an area that we could fly into. So sometimes it was just a small plane with a Vietnamese pilot. Sometimes it was with a forward air controller. And we would fly out and fly across the area we were going into and go over to another area much further away and circle and fumble around like we were really interested in something there. But as we would fly across our area of operation, I would be snapping as many pictures as I could, and we would, kind of move across it. So if there were any LZs or areas that might be good for LZs and things like that, then I could get pictures of it. And then we'd go hang out in this other place and go back. And we'd have those pictures that we could put together, kind of a mosaic of our area. And then I had shown my team how to build sand tables. So we had a big box of sand and we could go in and form the terrain and everything. And this is the insertion LZ. Here's the way we're going to go. Here's how far we're going this direction, whatever. Here are alternative LZs we could use to get back out. So, and we would rehearse and plan that way. And then, if we had to carry any special kind of equipment, cameras with the big telephoto lenses or wiretap equipment or whatever, we would practice and train with that to make sure that, we knew how to use it before we got out there. And then we just continue to reinforce our immediate action drills, our marksman skills, and, be prepared for whatever type of weather we were expecting. If it was monsoon season, we knew we were going to just get washed away every day. So a lot of things like that, so that we were ready to go when we went out there. And
you guys were, I hate to interrupt, when you guys are doing all of this training, because guys, if you've not read the book, again, grab the book. You go into great detail about the training, both before and after missions. And I know you like to have everybody know everything about everyone else's job. Were y'all trying to do to where everyone was a little bit proficient in medical training, or did y'all have one guy on the team that was fairly proficient and took care of everyone else? Or
my philosophy was, I want everyone to be as proficient medically as we could be, which caused a little problem with the teams, because one of the first things I wanted to do was with the medical training, and the biggest cause of death in most cases is you bleed out. You bleed to death. Every team member carried a canister with an IV bag in it, a ringer solution, so you could have an IV to try to increase your blood volume some while it was running out. But I wanted to make sure that everyone knew how to use the IV. So First time I got the team together, I called my interpreter over, and I said, and I had gotten some sterile needles from the medics, and I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. I want you, talking to Ben or Cantu or whoever the interpreter was on that team, I want you to give me an IV. So here it is. Here's my arm. I want you to put the needle in as we're given an IV, and then I'm going to do it to you. Oh, no. Number 10. I said, no, it's going to be number 1. I don't want anybody on the team trying to put an IV into me the first time while they're under fire. I want you to already be proficient, and I'm confident that you can put one in there while people are shooting at you. So we're going to practice this in between all of our missions. We're going to practice certain medical things. Inserting IVs is one of them. Putting tourniquets on is one of them. So we would go through that, and then some of the more technical things would have the medics come out and work with us and make sure we were doing things right. It's pretty easy to put a tourniquet on your arm or leg, but if you're hitting the head, you could put one around your neck, but, it stops the bleeding, but it stops you too. So anyway, we would have them come and work with us. So that was part of pre-mission training. And then when we would have people get hit, which one thing I tried to do in the book, backtrack for a second, people would say, you're supposed to have 3 Americans and 9 indig. Rarely did that happen. Most of the time it was me. Sometimes I had another American. But still, I didn't take the whole team. I'd take 6 or 7 people. That meant some people were left behind and didn't go on that mission. So I tried to put the team names, and you could see, here's who's going on a mission, here's who's staying behind. And then it becomes obvious to you after you've seen the after action review and you saw how many people got wounded on that mission. Well, they can't go on the next one. They may still be in the hospital or still recovering from their wounds. So you're taking the guys that didn't go last time and putting them in there. So it makes more sense, I think, when you can see how the people will be rotated around and why. So I tried to put in there, who, this guy was shot in the shoulder, this one was shot in the leg, this one was hit with shrapnel in the head, this one was burned with napalm, whatever it was. Here's what everybody's wounds were on that team. And in most cases, everybody had at least some shrapnel, some small shrapnel in them. But, that's kind of like you rub some dirt on it and you keep going. The medics would take their forceps and stuff, and they just pull those pieces out of you, and you're okay to go. But anyway, that was all part of post mission and pre-mission training. The other thing I noticed when I was on Alabama before I went out on my first mission was we went out to the range, big, wide, open field, open area, and we practiced these things. And it's really easy to do out in the open like that. When you try to do it in the jungle, it doesn't work. There are trees, there are rocks, there are stumps, there are vegetation. So I tried to take the teams over to Monkey Mountain, which was a jungle, and we could go live fire over there. And we could practice everything for real. We would practice it on the regular firing range. Then we would go over there and do everything in the jungle to make sure we could do it in that type of terrain. So
that's your training regimen. I mean, and it's broken down in the book. It's like I said offline, that was one of the besides all the great action, is a reason I was glad you finally decided to write a book, because I knew it would go into great detail about pre and post mission training. And one thing that comes up a lot when we're talking about SOG and the different CNCs and all of that. For launches into Laos, and I'm assuming some teams would go into North Vietnam at some points in time. Would y'all exclusively be launching out of CCN, or what? Did y'all had mobile launch sites as well as NKP, or?
Yeah, we had, since we were going across the border, we wanted to get closer to the border. So we had a launch site at Quang Tri that most of our missions went out of. If you're going to North Vietnam or close to it, very often you would go from NKP in Thailand, because the NKP was about 75 meters or 75 miles from the North Vietnam border. So you could get there a lot quicker. You were flying on the big CH-53s, which were fast, and they could get you up there. When you're going to Vietnam or North Vietnam or to the DMZ, the mission was more complicated because with those missions, you had to worry about North Vietnamese MiGs coming after you. And so on those missions, you had to have all of the support and everything that you normally had, plus you had to have combat air patrol going with you. So you had fighters going out there ahead of you and being out there to protect you from the MiGs while you were being inserted. So they would be fighting with the MiGs and everything to keep them from coming down and knocking your helicopter out. So, it was more exciting, more activity going on.
Did you personally, did you use NKP a lot?
I didn't use it a lot, just a couple of times. But yeah, it was, I mean, that was different. You had to fly to Thailand to get started. And then, you started your mission from over there, or the launch for the mission. So
I've heard some guys mention it is clearly a secretive base, but it was even so secretive that one guy mentioned that they back trucks up and y'all would get in the back of the trucks and go to, I guess, the room y'all would be waiting in until y'all decided to launch. Was it like that? Was it that hush hush?
Yeah, you didn't want anybody knowing what you were doing. So, and there were some times like that, that's mentioned in book 1, even at Phu-Bai, FOB1, where they actually loaded us into a couple of ambulances, which is against the Geneva Convention, drove us down the road a little ways to the helipad at night, late at night, no lights, and just backed us right up to the side of the CH-34s, the King Bees, and we just kind of jumped out of the back of the ambulance into the King Bee, and the ambulances left, and then we took off in the King Bee, so nobody even saw us loading up to go out. So.
Wow, that's pretty wild. It's still being that hush hush, But I mean, NKP and all that was a totally different ballgame. I've been trying to read a little bit about them, and it pretty interesting stuff that they were up to, the heavy hook team and all that. Very very interesting. Let me see. I know someone. This is pretty interesting because I don't think I've ever asked, and it's been coming up a little bit. But Frank was curious with CCN. Did y'all ever get naval support fire from any of the ships in the bay or in the sea or anything?
I didn't. I don't know if others did or not. I did have a couple of insertions for rehearsals where we were put in with PT boats, took us to shore, and we jumped out, and we didn't go on the mission where we actually practiced that. The mission got changed, but we were set out to be inserted by the Navy. So
Wow, that is that's very interesting. I've not heard of I don't think I've ever heard of any guys practicing, at least from talking to the gentleman I know. That's pretty interesting. And I wonder what in the heck the mission would have entailed if y'all would have continued on. That's very interesting. Galil was wondering, you personally, what was the most impressive feat of enemy engineering that you came across? What encampments, tunnel complexes, mountain work, what have you?
some of the bunker complexes, excuse me, you'll read about in book 2 were very sophisticated, but we also we went on one mission where our mission was to take out an underwater bridge.
Oh, wow.
So there's a major highway that had a bridge on it, and we would bomb it, every few days, and they'd come running out of the bushes and put the bridge back up. And then we would discover way on up the road a long ways, the trucks were still moving. So how did they get across the bridge if we just took it out? So the intel said, we think they've got another bridge that they're using that we can't see. And they had built a bridge, that was about 18 inches or so underwater. So you couldn't see it. And there was a jungle canopy and everything. You couldn't see the bridge. So we went in to find it and be able to put some airstrikes on it and knock it out. But I thought that was pretty cool to be able to build it underwater, just with the equipment and stuff that they had.
That's amazing, and it seems like quite a few of the CCN teams throughout history have come across underwater bridges up there. Now that I've heard about, Frank Pulley with RT Idaho, they came across one that I think they use satchel charges to blow it, but that's quite the impressive feat of engineering. Was it a bamboo, or did they get supplies that they had scrounged from y'all, or?
Yeah, they were, they had cut trees, they had, trees in the ground, post, and they had built a bridge on top of it. I mean, the one we were looking at was lumber. I mean, it was, heavy duty stuff because they were driving those big trucks across it.
Man, oh man, that is some amazing. You've got to respect them. Some people on here kind of get trashy on them and all of that, but my God, you've got to respect their determination and their force of ingenuity out there to do that kind of stuff. I mean, my goodness. Let's see here. We're kind of slowing down on questions, but I thought if you'd like to end with sharing something, I thought a very interesting story that's always been my favorite, and I'm glad it was mentioned in the book because I'd come across it in the Facebook group speaking with your cousin Carl. I thought Carl getting to visit you guys was absolutely the wildest thing there. He is in Vietnam. He's a Vietnam vet himself, and he somehow ends up on a top secret special forces base to see his cousin.
Yeah, he's Carl's a very interesting guy. He spent 3 tours in Vietnam. Part of it was with Rangers, and I was on up on Marble Mountain with RT Michigan. Bargewell and I were up there with the team, and we've been there a few days, and I got a call saying that I needed to come back down to the camp, that there was somebody there, and that's really all they told me. And so I took a couple of the indig and we went down, And, here's cousin Carl, inside this top secret compound, CCN, that no one was supposed to even know existed. No one was supposed to know that I was there. And no one was supposed to be able to get into this top secret. And he talked his way in and had them track me down and call me to come down. So there he is. And that was exciting to see my cousin that I hadn't seen for a couple of years, and there he is in CCN. So we went down to the mess hall. We got something to eat. Went over to S4 because he had about 3 or 4 days off that his company commander had allowed him to come down to see his cousin. So I told him I could take him back up on the mountain with me, and I could promise him a good time because he's going to get shot at every night he was up there. So he thought that was cool. So we went to S4. We got him a weapon, ammunition, and all of that. And of course, he turned down the steel pot and flak jacket because nobody in SOG wore that stuff. So took him back up on the mountain, and he spent the rest of our little tour up there with the team, got to know everybody. I took him with me when on cave search mission that I decided to go on because we were getting bored. So we went down to some of the big caves in Marble Mountain and went in. As soon as the first one we walked in, there were 2 NVA in there. And they opened fire. Cousin Carl took one of them out right away. And we hit the other one and ended up killing both of them. So he was pretty excited that he got to shoot some NVA while he was there, and right off the bat. But they attacked us, tried to get up there every night. So he got in plenty of combat time up there on the mountain. Yeah, that's cousin Carl on the right, me on the left. So that was pretty cool to have your cousin show up. You get to go shoot some people together and chase some bad guys, and yeah, that was pretty cool.
Not only very cool that y'all getting to get in a little combat together, but the fact that he was able to talk his way onto the base that he wasn't supposed to know anything about.
He's always been that way, still that way. It's unbelievable, what he can do. He starts talking to you, and you start liking him, and next thing you know, you give him whatever he wants, and it's just funny to watch it.
Wasn't he in Thompson's Rangers back in the day?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
Yeah. And when we put Thompson's Rangers together, we were 6 or 7 years old. He's in the logbook. His name's in there. So he and I put that thing together, and we recruited our cousins to come in and be members, and then we expanded it outside the family and brought other kids in, and yeah, that was pretty cool.
I love that. That's one of my favorite stories. That's great. Then we've got 2 more, and then we'll let you decide if you'd like to share anything, or if we've pretty much covered it all. But Jason is curious about, did you do any reading while you were in SOG, other than, of course, going over AARs and getting ready for missions? Did you have any pleasure reading, if you will?
No, not really. I was sort of a scientific guy, studying chemistry to be a chemist when I came in the Army. So I was, really focused around chemistry and logic, and started watching, the NVA and figuring out why they were doing what chemicals they were getting in their system because of, the combat. So I knew a lot about stress and, the adrenaline and cortisol and all that stuff and what it would do to you. But I also started thinking, why why would these people, and Dig in particular, why would these people just continue to go out on these missions knowing that everyone is probably their last mission? And they were doing that before I got there. They would do it the whole time I was there, and they'd still be doing it after I left, unless they got killed. Why would people do that? What motivates you to go out and do this kind of stuff? And what about the effect that it has on people? Because you could see, we didn't talk about PTSD back then. You talked about battle fatigue and different words like that. TBI was not known. If concussion hit you and knocked you out, they helped you back up on your feet, told you to rub a little dirt on your face and keep going. So why would people do that, and what's the impact? So later on, when I went back to school, I changed over to psychology, but I didn't have those kinds of, or access to those kinds of books. So the reading I was doing was the mission folders for missions we were going on, or missions that had been run in the area that we were going into to see what other people had encountered. I was also making notes about missions that I went on, things we learned, the visual reconnaissances and things like that. And that helped me when I started writing this book. I still had some of my notes, so I had a lot of dates and VRs that we went on and where we went, things like that. And then you'll see in book 2 that when I came back from Vietnam, that they told me that I was only going to be back in the States for about 8 months. And then, the plan was to go back to SOG. So I wanted to use those 8 months to increase my skill set as much as I could, so I would be better when I went back. So most of my reading was around things that kind of fell in line with what I was just talking about. Now, when I got back to the States, then I had a lot more access to books and things to try to understand some of what was going on.
Do you have a personal favorite book, not scientific or anything like that? Maybe let's not even say educational. Do you have a fiction or a nonfiction book that you absolutely love, that you war history or anything like that you could just read over and over or any point in time?
Probably the war book that I've read the most is SOG, codename Dynamite. I've read that thing so many times. Anyway, I remember reading LZ Bird early on in my career, and I thought, wow, this is interesting to see what those guys did, how they tried to survive. So I like that. There were some Zen, Zen books that I read because I was doing a lot of martial arts at the time too. So that helped me before I went over. It helped me with stress management and the hand-to-hand type of stuff that was going on. So
I'm gonna be looking into LZ Bird. I've not heard of that book before.
Yeah, it's not a big book. I mean, it's small, but it kind of gets your attention. So, wow.
Wow, if it gets if it gets your attention, then I'll definitely be checking it out then. Mr. Jason Damath, his father, John Damath, ran Recon at CCS and CCC, but he was curious, did you have any contact with Command and Control South guys or any CCC men while you were in country?
I had Bob Howard came up one time, and I went on a recon visual recon with him for an area that he was being targeted toward. So I got to meet him and chat with him some, and then across time we kept running into each other, different places in the military. In fact, when I don't want to spoil this for book 2, but I'll just say that he decided, or somebody decided, that he needed to go to Ranger School. And I was an instructor in the Ranger Department when he came, and I thought, why are they wasting the Army's time? Just give him a Ranger tab. There's nothing in Ranger School that's going to compare anywhere close to what this guy has already done. Just give him one and move him on. Let him go do something more important. But anyway, he had to go through it so he could get the tab. So,
do you happen to remember if Jason was curious? Do you happen to remember if he was waiting on the Medal of Honor, or had that incident taken place?
He already had. Well, when he came to Ranger School, he already had it.
Oh, your VR flight, I should add, when you were in Vietnam.
I know he'd been recommended. I don't know if he actually had it then or not.
Wow.
But everybody knew. Geez, he was recommended like 3 times.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know if he had actually received it at that point. But everybody knew about him and that he had been recommended for the Medal of Honor.
Kind of for on our side to close, and we'll hand it off to you. What was that? Because me and Jason were actually talking about that, seeing CCN teams going to help out down south, and then a CCS exploitation force going up north at one time, I think during Dewey Canyon to help. But was there, was that often to where either teams or men, without being officially transferred, go help out at another CNC? Or
yeah, that happens sometimes. They might need a team down at CCC or S, and we'd send a team down. I know John Strackermeyer, I know he went down once or twice and ran some missions down there, with them. And so occasionally you might have that happen.
Any particular team get picked, or is it just who's either up on the slot? Or
yeah, it's kind of who was available at the time.
Okay.
Because you stayed booked pretty solid. Most of the time you didn't have a whole lot of time between missions, but sometimes they'd take you and send you someplace. And you'll see in book 2 how I got put on some special missions.
Okay, good. Wow, we're getting a lot of little tidbits here for part 2. You're just hooking us even. You've about got us on the boat here. Let's see. I was waiting for some more. Well, we've gone about an hour and a half of you being gracious answering questions. Would you like to speak about anything before we shut down for the day? I'm gonna hand it to you if you'd like to share anything or anything of the such.
Yeah, I would say that you think of you read about SOG teams, you hear about all the insane things that they did. Insanity is not just going on a SOG mission. It can be any kind of mission, particularly a mission where somebody's shooting at you. Things that run your stress level up high. And it can, one mission like that can run your stress level up so much, have such an impact on you, that you do end up with PTS or PTSS, symptoms and or PTSD, and we've got to do a much better job in the military, in particular, about managing how much people do, taking care of the people better once they do start to, get some symptoms. We just don't do a good job, and it's got to start. It's a little bit late, I've been on a SOG mission and I come back. It's a little bit late to start saying, well, we're going to fix that problem. You got to fix the problem way before the person goes out there. In fact, my philosophy is you got to start with kids, teaching them how to manage stress and deal with it, so that by the time they finally get in stressful situations, it doesn't have as a traumatic effect on what they're doing. But for the people who have already been out there and going out there now, we just got to take better care of them. There are new techniques coming out all the time, and it's difficult sometimes to get the VA to take a look at that because you're trying to go through a bureaucracy. It's difficult to get the adequate treatment. So not only do we end up with a lot of people walking around, with TBI or with PTS that shouldn't be that way, we're not taking care of them. And a lot of that can lead to suicide behavior. And we've been, with our company, been trying to work with vets for years now. We've got an assessment that we use called the Arsenal that we give to vets, and it helps give them a snapshot of where they are and things they can work on. And it's not trying to make them feel bad. It's trying to help them be the best they can be. And we use that same assessment with people who want to be tier 1 athletes, tier 1 special ops guys. We got Sam Cox right now that's in the process of making history with solo crossing of Antarctica, and he's several days into it. He's used the Arsenal to kind of assess himself to see areas he might want to work on before he gets out there alone for 90 days in Antarctica, pulling everything he's going to use to get across, and he's going to eat. He's dragging all of that with him in a 300-pound sled on a pair of skis. He's skiing. So there are things that we need to be doing. You see a number of 22 vets a day commit suicide. I'm telling you, that number is coming mostly from VA, and most of the vets are not in VA. So you don't hear about, what happens to them. And the research I've seen more recently says that veteran suicide rates more like 50 plus a day. And the active duty suicide rate, 1 to 2 a day. And we're doing a lot of work with the Navy right now, trying to help them identify people who are at risk and get them the treatment to get over it and be successful. So anyway, anything you can do to help vets, I'd ask you, go do it. They deserve our help. So that's kind of what I wanted to close out with, was let's do what we can.
Could not agree more. I've just been informed that I'm starting to get while it not be much until it grows, but I'll start getting money from the YouTube page here. They've been contacting me, and I'm trying to find now where I'm going to be donating all of the money coming in. What best vet organization that helps vets with recovery or everyday life post service. So I'm going to definitely be doing my part and continue to do my part. So I thank you for coming on. We all thank you for coming on, and can't wait clearly for part 2 to come out, and we'll be looking forward for you to come on and promote it and us talk about that. But guys, I'll share your hellos and thank yous and all that. But other than that, I believe we've wrapped it up nice and concise. Is there anything else you'd like to share with today, sir?
No, I just appreciate the opportunity to come on and share some thoughts. And, if anybody's got more questions, they want to email me or contact me, let me know. And we'll see if we can get them answered.
And Mr. Dick is on Twitter. Those of y'all that follow me or Jason, he, as a matter of fact, I tagged him in one of the Twitter X, whatever you want to call that thing. I've tagged him, so you can ask him questions on there. He's very good about getting back with you. Or if you can't reach him or not on social media and need to leave it on here, I will get it off the YouTube, and I will get it to Dr. Thompson. So thank you guys for your questions. And of course, Dr. Thompson, thank you for coming to sit with us for an hour.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
All right. Absolutely. You guys take care. Stay safe.
Yes, sir. See you later.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.